वेलकम टू आवर नेशन स्टेट डायलॉग सीरीज राष्ट्र राज्य संवाद श्रृंखला में आपका स्वागत है. 欢迎收看民族国家对话系列. I'm Dr. Geeta Kochar, moderator for today's discussion. So today it is our pleasure to have with us Dr. Thanya, who is an associate professor at the School of International Trade and Economics, the University of International Business and Economics. She is also the deputy director at the BRICS Research Center in the same university. She has a Ph.D. in Macroeconomics from Guanghua School of Management, Peking University, and has published widely a lot of research papers and has presented so many places. She was also there for the Raisina dialogue and a lot of research papers to her credit. So welcome to our show, Dr. Thanya. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, so let's begin with the hot topic that is there about, the India-China relations are having a new thaw, and there's some kind of a resetting that is happening in the bilateral relations, including they've been opening, border trade routes, right? Lipo Lake Pass is the latest one. So how do you see these developments?
Okay. Actually, I think, the recent warming of India-China relationship is a very positive and pragmatic development. Actually, from a Chinese perspective, a stable and improving China-India relationship actually is good for both countries and also for our common region and the broader global south. Especially about the recent progress of reopening border trade routes and restoring some practical exchanges can really help build confidence and trust between both countries step by step. This is my primary view. Thank you.
So basically, you are also the deputy director of the BRICS Research Center, in China. So can you tell us, we all know that BRICS is very crucial for creating an alternative to the existing world order. So what is your opinion on this, and what role can, China, India, and even Russia play in this?
Yeah, thank you for this question. As commonly agreed, BRICS may have the potential to provide an alternative to the existing world order, as you mentioned. But I think it is more than that. And I think in China's view, BRICS is more seen as a platform to improve global governance, increase the representation and voice of emerging markets and developing countries, and also to promote a just and equitable international order. And within this framework, our three countries can actually make complementary contributions. For example, I think China can play a role in providing development-oriented public goods. For example, through financing platforms such as the New Development Bank, and also advancing infrastructure connectivity, which is consistent with our One Belt initiative, and promoting a cooperation in the digital and green economy. And India may contribute by leveraging its strengths in digital public infrastructure, services sector development, and very strong power in global south cooperation, particularly in areas such as digital inclusion, healthcare access, and capacity building. And Russia actually, with its comparative advantages in energy, resources, and regional connectivity across Eurasia, can support energy security cooperation and facilitate coordination in broader Eurasia frameworks. And at the same time, all three countries can together uphold multilateralism, defend the central role of the United Nations, and deepen cooperation in key areas such as economic growth, finance, public health, energy transition, and digital economy. Yeah.
But you just mentioned, there is some kind of a complementary role that all of these three countries play. But at the same time, Russia has proposed the RIC, right? In your opinion, what is the objective behind it, and what are the hindrances from the Chinese perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the main objective behind RIC is to provide a platform for strategic communications among three major countries in Eurasia, and to strengthen coordination on major international and regional issues, and together contribute to peace, stability, and development. And from a Chinese perspective, I think the idea itself is very constructive. And about the main obstacles, the main hindrances, I think maybe something practical. Because we have common interests and we have common goals, but in practical issues like strategic mistrust between some parties, and different security perceptions, and also external geopolitical pressures, uh, actually are very different for our three countries. So I guess the future of RIC, or the potential of RIC, depends less on declarations, but more on whether the three sides can build mutual trust and keep the mechanism open, pragmatic, and non-confrontational. Thank you.
Oh, that's very interesting, take. But let me move a little towards, inwards to China, in the sense of, looking at China and the Chinese economy. And, many scholars now are talking about it, that China is now moving towards something called as a middle income trap. And the economy is really not performing as well as it did, few years back. I mean, it used to be around 14% of, growth rate, and that has come down drastically. So, what are the problems and challenges to China's economy, and what are the government policies for the long-term sustainable development of China?
Okay. From a Chinese scholar's perspective, I think China is not heading toward the so-called middle income trap. We cannot deny that China's economy is facing several real challenges now, including insufficient domestic demand, pressures on our real estate sector, and a more uncertain external environment, as China is an exporter in the global economy. So this also caused an issue for Chinese. At the same time, we can see that the Chinese government's long-term response is clear. Pursue high quality development, expand domestic demand, develop new quality productive forces, strengthen innovation, advance green and low carbon transition, and guard against major financial risks. So, in other words, I think China is trying to shift from high speed growth in the past to more sustainable, innovation driven growth in the future. So, the issue, I think, is not simply whether the growth is lower, it's less about the number in per capita GDP, but about the structure of the economy, about whether the growth model is becoming more resilient and better balanced over time. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point made. I mean, but I would just
Mhm.
push you a little more on this point that you said, it's not entering into the middle income trap. But do you see the challenges of, the population decline, and the correlation that you're talking, that China is looking at consumption driven economy, boosting that? So is there a contradiction in that or not? Do you see any challenges in that?
Yes, I think it's somewhat challenging because we know the current issue lies more on the domestic demand side of Chinese society, and we know actually, domestic demand, no matter about consumption or about investment, they are very sensitive to uncertainties and risks. However, now China has, several uncertainties and risks coming from the uh, international events, not from our domestic side. That means actually it becomes really hard for Chinese governments to really encourage consumers and investors by only providing our domestic incentives, because all the other risks cannot be avoided, like what happened in the Middle East, like the potential rise in the energy cost. Yeah, so I think this is the major challenge. And that's why China now is really, want to see the peace in regional economy, but really want to, like to promote the ceasefire in Middle East. Yeah.
So I'll come to these questions later, because I mean the challenges that you're saying is across board. I mean India is also facing the same challenge. Many other countries are going to face the same challenge. But at the same time, we do see at present India's economic growth is doing great. So I mean I would want our people to understand how Chinese view India's economic growth, because there is a lot of misconception and misrepresentation on understanding from the Indian side when they look at how the Chinese are viewing. So I would want the real Chinese to tell us, how do you see India's economic growth, and how do you see that whether this can be a new sort of a model for economic growth or not. In what sense do you look at India's economic growth?
Yeah, thank you for this question. This is a very good one, because we need to have more idea exchanges between both countries.
Absolutely.
I think China's view on India's economic growth is to view it as an important development in Asia and also in global South. I think a common Chinese view is that the simultaneous development of China and India is actually an opportunity rather than a threat to each other. And India's growth reflects its large markets, demographic advantages, digitalization, and also industrial upgrading efforts. And we view this and we really appreciate all this. And I think India actually has the potential to become a fully new model of growth in the future. But whether this becomes a fully new growth model still depends on how India further handles manufacturing competitiveness, infrastructure, employment, and social inclusion. And China, I think, actually can see India's rise as a very important part of the broader trend of emerging economies gaining greater weight in the world economy. And I think the global South countries should together, take advantage of India's rise, and we can have some mutual benefits together, and we can have, some bigger voice together in the international platform. Yeah.
I mean, very well said, because there are these talk I have heard. I mean, President Xi Jinping has clearly stated that Asia for Asians, and even our Prime Minister Modi has already talked about there are enough spaces in this region for each country to grow and find their own spaces to expand. And of course,
Yeah.
the mutual cooperation that you're talking about is very crucial for both countries to develop in the entire region as well as to develop their own countries. But let me move to the question that you were talking about how China is relating to the Middle East crisis. I mean, regional dynamics, as you just mentioned, and we all know, is an it's like ongoing wars that have literally altered the bilateral and multilateral relations each country had. So what is Chinese government's view over these conflicts, and how does China plan to maneuver its bilateral relations with countries like Iran, Venezuela, or maybe even other countries? Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Actually, I'm not an expert of geopolitical, issues. However, I can give some of my views about China's, statements and also movements. I think China's position is more about regional hotspot issues should be handled through dialogues and negotiations rather than by force, and that sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter should be respected by every country. On conflicts such as those in the Middle East, China presents itself as supporting ceasefire, peace talks, and political settlements. And also, you talk about the relationship with countries such as Iran and Venezuela, which, just well, sadly involved deep into these regional conflicts. And I think China is still likely to continue its approach of maintaining normal state-to-state relationships with those countries, and also try to deepening practical cooperation. And still China is always on the side of opposing interference in internal affairs of other countries. So I think the basic line is stability, no interference, and promote political resolutions to these disputes. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, most of the countries, including I think India, wants a dialogue to be the premise of any kind of conflict rather than engaging in this kind of wars, because it's detrimental to economic growth. I mean, we all, whether in China or India, are looking at economic growth as the focus of the development for the whole mankind, and any kind of conflict is really detrimental to our growth. But having said that, I mean, one of the things which China has been pushing, and when you're talking about state-to-state relations, this comes to my mind, and most of our young scholars are also looking at this issue, is about the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative, which China is floating right under the larger umbrella of the BRI. So what are the objectives of China with these initiatives in the region, and how does China plan to remove the threat perceptions emerging from these initiatives, from other countries, including India? I mean, many of them at times, put some flags on these, initiatives. So, would you tell us how China wants to, progress in this, and what are their objectives in doing it? Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you for this very nice question. Actually, China has recently put forward 4 major global initiatives, and I think this is a very good chance for me to briefly introduce these initiatives, though I may not be so accurate. So the first is, as you mentioned, the Global Development Initiative. According to my knowledge, this initiative focuses on accelerating the implementation of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So, with priorities such as poverty reduction, food security, public health, green development, and digital connectivity. So, this is about global development initiative. The second is Global Security Initiative. This initiative emphasizes a vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security. Actually, it advocates for dialogues over confrontation and also political settlement of disputes. Well, the third initiative is the Global Civilization Initiative. This initiative highlights mutual respect, inclusiveness, and exchanges among civilizations, opposing ideological confrontation and promoting people-to-people understanding. And the Global Governance Initiative is a recently proposed initiative. It stresses the need to make global governance more just, equitable, and effective, with stronger representation and voice for developing countries and better coordination under the United Nations centered international system. So this is about these 4 initiatives. So you may see that the primary objective of these initiatives is not to build a exclusive system, but to provide some international public goods and complement existing multilateral frameworks. And I think for countries like India and also other developing countries, um, I think, this initiative actually aligns with the benefits of developing countries. As you can see from the content of all these initiatives, actually, the primary objective of these initiatives is not to build exclusive systems, but to provide international public goods from the Chinese side to the global society, and also complement existing multilateral frameworks. And for countries like India and also other countries, I think about reducing threat perceptions will depend on also practical movements and aspects like ensuring openness and inclusiveness, aligning with United Nations principles, promoting joint projects and joint researches, and also enhancing transparency and consultation. So in this sense, I have to say that these initiatives are designed to be platforms for cooperation rather than instruments of competition. Yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, one of the things which is also being, discussed now and is a hot topic in China, I know, is about the 15th five-year plan, which is going to be one of the, foundations for pushing all of these objectives that you're talking about. So, can you explain for our, viewers, what are the focus areas and visions of the Chinese government for the 15th five-year plan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this question. As I mentioned before, now the Chinese development plan is centered on high quality development. So it's about this 15 5-year plan. And its key focus areas actually includes building a modern industrial system, well, on the basis of the current, industrialization of Chinese. And second is about strengthening innovation capacity. That means we will invest more money in, R&D and other innovation-driven economic sectors. And the third is to expand domestic demand. That is to solve the current challenge that Chinese economy faces. That is the insufficient domestic demand. And we also will just making more efforts in improving public well-being, advancing green and low carbon development, and also moving toward common prosperity, which is a notion in Chinese about let everyone have a good life together. So the vision is more about to build a more innovative, greener, safer, and more balanced development model. Yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, because you have given a very broad, idea of what are the visions of the Chinese in terms of high growth and everything, I also want to look at the future of cooperation between India and China. So, what are the areas that you see of future cooperation between India and China, and what are the challenges of these cooperation?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think future cooperation between India and China can expand in trade, investment, manufacturing, supply chains, climate responses, public health, disaster relief, tourism, education, and also multilateral coordination in mechanisms such as BRICS and also Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Because actually, as our two countries are so close to each other, we share a lot of common challenges, not only economically, but also in climate issues and also in, other geopolitical issues. So I think our two economies also have some complementary strengths in market size. Both of us have a large population and we have large market potential, and also we have complementary strengths in industrial capacity and also development needs. And even though we have so many, cooperation potentials together, we also face some challenges. Um, uh, it just lies in things about strategic mistrust and also security concerns between each other, and also the impact of wider geopolitical competition together. So I think the more realistic path of our two countries to work together is to enlarge practical cooperation while managing differences carefully and preventing specific disputes from defining the entire relationship. That means when we face differences and disputes, we just focus on the issue and try to solve them. However, when we view the relationship together, maybe we can see more opportunities than threats. Yeah, this is my view. Thank you.
very holistic, idea of what are the areas and what are the challenges. And I'll just put you the last question is about, you know, there are many who view that the thaw in India-China relations is basically temporary, and they look at the future conflicts are going to be more likely. So, how, in your opinion, can these be avoided, and what are the China's expectations, visions, and actions to avoid any kind of future possibilities of conflicts?
Well, thank you for this question. Personally, I would not fully agree with the view that the current improvement in China-India relations is just a temporary, or the future conflict is inevitable. From a broader perspective, especially with the rise of global South cooperation and the increasing importance of emerging economies, I think China-India relations are more likely to show a trend of gradual stabilization and also improvement rather than persistent confrontations. However, we may have some fluctuations in bilateral relationships. However, I think the long-term trend is just gradual warming and also stabilization. And of course, differences and challenges will remain. The key is how to manage them, because I think when you pick up any two countries in the world, they have differences and they have disputes between each other. So future risks, I think, can be effectively mitigated if both sides just can stick to several principles like respect each other's core concerns and maintain communication at the leadership, diplomatic, and also military levels, and avoid letting competition escalate into confrontation. Here I want to, talk more about Chinese thinking and Chinese culture, because in China there is a long-standing emphasis on what we commonly call harmony without uniformity, 和而不同 in Chinese, meaning that countries can coexist and cooperate despite differences. And this is closely related to the idea of seeking common ground while reserving differences, 求同存异 in Chinese. And there is similar culture in India traditional wisdom. This just provides a practical approach for managing complex bilateral relations like what between China and India. So I think China's expectation is that two countries should be partners rather than rivals, and we should value more about the opportunities between each other rather than threats to each other. And the broader vision is about peaceful coexistence, mutual respect, common development, and win-win cooperation. And in practical terms, I think strengthening confidence building measures, improving crisis management mechanisms, and steadily expanding mutually beneficial and practical cooperation are some effective ways. That's my own opinion. Thank you.
That was very well said. I mean, managing differences is the crux. We need to, find out ways to coexist by, rooting out all the differences. On that note, I think thank you very much for giving us your time, and it was interesting to listen to you. But anyway, we had a good conversation, and I hope our viewers learned a lot from this. And for all of those who are watching this, please continue to watch, some more interesting videos that we are going to come up with, and have more academic, exchanges with scholars across board, practitioners and diplomats. And please subscribe and like to our channel. We'll have many more interesting, discussions. Namaskar.